Seja bem-vindo a mais um vídeo. These books fix my attention span. Esses livros fixaram minha perda de atenção, meu devaneio.
Hey guys, got a little different video today. My whole life I've been super addicted to social media and like YouTube and just doom scrolling.
Eu sou.
Found a lot of progress in fixing my attention span, mainly by reading and sometimes by reading kind of difficult or longer books. So a little bit of background.
Não, é só uns livros bitelo, hein?
I grew up watching so much YouTube. I am still kind of addicted to YouTube. I would watch it all the time, and even today sometimes I find it really difficult to fall asleep at night without having a video playing right in front of my face, which is super bad. I know it's kind of embarrassing to talk about, but I've talked to some of my friends and stuff, and other people I've talked to kind of have the same problem where, it's really hard nowadays to just not be entertained all the time. Anytime I have some free time, I can't sit still, I got to be doing something or watching something or consuming something. And when I started college, I discovered reading, and I kind of started to fall in love with reading, and it really changed the way I view like entertainment. Back in the day, people used to read for fun and for entertainment, and nowadays it feels a lot more like a chore because, you could just go on YouTube or go watch a movie or something, and, it's just a way faster way to get entertainment. But especially if you're just consuming all this short form media content like TikTok or Instagram Reels and you're just scrolling all the time, it's just really gonna be not so good for your attention span. And what I found was I was just feeding this like endless loop of wanting, that hit of dopamine every time you scroll. And there's a lot of studies on this. It's kind of a problem, and I this loop of wanting, that hit of dopamine every time you scroll. And, there's a lot of...
Analisando os efeitos do TikTok on the attention span envolvendo estudantes da high school, do ensino médio, né? Estudos investigantes, the influence, social media app. Mano, depois eu vou ler esses... Deixa eu tirar a foto. Depois eu vou ler esse estudo.
Studies on this. It's kind of a problem, and I wanted to do something about it. But yeah, I was so addicted to YouTube and stuff. I literally for like years could not fall asleep without watching YouTube. I could not turn my phone off and just fall asleep. I had to have something playing while I fell asleep. I don't know if anyone else has a similar problem, but it was really bad. I was extremely dependent on this entertainment. And so a few years ago, I made a goal to try to just replace that with something else, and I decided to try reading. It totally changed my life. It was really cool, and I discovered this whole new form of entertainment that I hadn't really put much thought into before. And I really do feel like it has fixed my attention span and how I focus when it comes to like studying for school and stuff like that. I'm able to put my phone down and actually get some work done, which, a few years ago, it was really difficult for me. And even reading was really difficult for me in the beginning, and it's gotten easier over time. But, when you're reading a book, especially like a really big book, you're not...
Eu tenho essa dificuldade, tô tendo, e eu tô tendo que me forçar. Esse livro, cara, eu tô lendo esse livro desde... Lendo é uma palavra muito pesada, mas aqui, ó, não li quase nada. Eu li só essa parte aqui. Não cheguei nem na metade. Eu li 72 páginas de 278, então ainda falta mais de 200 páginas. Eu tô tentando forçar eu ler. Eu tô com esse livro aqui desde o meu aniversário, desde outubro, cara. Olha que loucura. Outubro do ano passado.
not getting an instant hit of
E
dopamine
olha o tamanho que o cara lê de livro.
like you are if you're scrolling on social media. There will be times where you're reading and you're bored, Of course, the books still are entertaining. You want to read books that you want to read, and you want to read to be entertained. But I'm telling you, reading is so much more rewarding than watching social media or anything like that. In my opinion, it's probably the most rewarding form of entertainment we can get. So I think we should be reading more. Of course, you do not have to read big books. When I first started reading, and still today, I don't like to read big
E eu já li muito, tá? Chegou um tempo que eu lia bastante. Tipo assim, 2 livros por mês. Pra mim é bastante.
books. I read a lot of short stories, a lot of short books, but I did notice that they've rewired something in my brain to where I can kind of sit down, relax, and just focus on something, whether that be reading or schoolwork or anything else. I can just do it a little bit better now. So I ended up reading Crime and Punishment. This was like my first difficult
Crime e
classic
Castigo do
book.
Dostoiévski.
This took me a long time to get through. It was not easy to read. It was very confusing at times. When I first started reading it, I was not
Ele falou, não é fácil pra ler.
really into it at all. It took me a while to get into it, but when I did get into it, I really got into it, and I kind of became obsessed with it. And I would think about it when I wasn't reading it, and I'd want to pick it up and keep reading it. And I found myself not having as much screen time on my phone because I was reading more, and I was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. And the biggest thing I changed with my schedule is that I stopped watching YouTube every night and just falling asleep to whatever was on YouTube, and I started reading until I got tired enough and just fell asleep. This was a big change for me. And like I said before, it's not like an instant dopamine hit when you're reading. It's slow, especially with these longer books, and it's drawn out. So I found myself getting tired faster, falling asleep earlier, and it ultimately kind of fixed my sleep schedule because I've always had a terrible sleep schedule my whole life, and it wasn't until I started reading at night before bed and I'd put my phone away that I started getting really good sleep. And I'd wake up in the morning still thinking about the book, and I'd want to pick it up and continue reading. And for me, it just felt like a much more productive thing to do with my time than to doom scroll, because you're not going to remember hardly anything or any information you get when you're just constantly scrolling, feeding the algorithm. So after I read Crime and Punishment, I got really fascinated with Russian literature, and I read some Tolstoy. I read Anna Karenina. I think this was a little bit more difficult than Crime and Punishment, but I really liked this as well. But yeah, at times it was kind of a drag, and
Então esse do Léo Tolstói aí, Ana Karenina, ele diz que é mais difícil que o Crime e Castigo do Dostoiévski. O cara tá se provando, cada livro que passa, ele tá tentando dificultar mais, hein?
and it was difficult to not pick up my phone and just give up. But let me tell you, this book was so rewarding. There were parts that I liked more than other parts. This follows a couple different storylines, and
é mais difícil porque às vezes é entediante, igual esse livro aqui. É muito legal. Capitães de Areia, de Jorge Amado. Mas às vezes é entediante e aí dá vontade de pegar o celular. É o que ele tá falando ali. É mais difícil por isso. Negócio de pegar no celular.
I found myself drawn to one of the storylines way more than the other one. But, it was really hard to get through for me, and it took me a lot of time and effort. And ultimately, when I finished it, I felt like it was very rewarding, and I really appreciated the writing in the book. But yeah, I feel like it's pretty obvious why people aren't reading as much nowadays, especially younger people. It's not that we're like dumb or lazy or anything like that. It's just that we have more efficient ways of getting that dopamine hit, that instant dopamine form of entertainment from social media and stuff like that. But I would definitely recommend trying some different ways of getting that entertainment. And for me, it was reading. After that, I ended up reading 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And this book was very, very difficult to get through. It is the
100 Years of Solitude. 100 anos de solidão. De solitude. Solitude é diferente de solidão.
writing it's really cool, but it's so dense, and there's so much going on, and you really have to focus to follow the story. There's so many different characters, and there's characters with the same name, and it was really difficult for me. If there's any book
livro que me confundiu, eu tenho que pegar para ler de novo quando eu estiver no ritmo de leitura, é O Cortiço. Porque literalmente é um cortiço e só vai chegando um monte de personagem. Então eu panguava. Toda hora apresentava um personagem novo, aí o tio Zé, aí o não sei o que, a Naninha, aí o Zezinho. Porra.
that really tested my reading endurance or my attention span, it was this book. And this is a great book. It's magical, it's unique. I've never read anything like it. It's still to this day one of my favorite books of all time. And I kid you not, when I started reading more books, even though these books
Nossa, se tornou o livro favorito dele.
are completely
De todos os
unrelated
tempos.
to what I was studying in school, I was just doing so much better in school. And I really feel like it was because my attention span was kind of improving. And I want to make it clear, I was not only reading to improve my attention span. I genuinely fell in love with reading, and I really enjoyed the books I was reading. But I did like challenge myself to read more difficult books, and I ended up reading Demons by Dostoevsky. This book is known to be pretty difficult, and it was really confusing, and I could not get into this book for the longest time, and I almost DNF'd it several times. But once I got a couple hundred pages in, I really started to follow the story, and I really liked it. Yeah, this is a really long one that really tested my attention span as well. I also read 1Q84 by Murakami. It's another pretty big one. This one, it's easier to get through. It's a newer book. It's not a classic. Yeah, it's just nice to get into a story, and yeah, it gives you something to look forward to, and you're not just endlessly scrolling, because when you're scrolling on social media, you know, I feel like you're not really looking for anything, especially when you're watching the short form videos on TikTok and whatnot. You're not really looking for anything. The algorithm is just feeding you what it thinks you're going to want. But when you really get into a book that you want to
E quando você tá scrollando, é um conteúdo mais fácil. Você não precisa pensar para consumir, você só consome, fica ali, só scrollando. Aqui não, quando você vai ler um livro, você tem que prestar atenção no que é, ué.
read, you'll be thinking about it all day, and you'll be excited to pick it up again. And it
Nossa, mas por que o notebook dele tá em pé? Tá deitado, né?
could take you months to finish a book, and it just gives you something fun to look forward to that's not just doom scrolling. So, you know, I'm all for replacing doom scrolling with other stuff, because I am a chronic doom scroller myself. I still struggle with it, do
Tamo
not
junto.
get me wrong, but I do feel like reading has improved my attention span, it's improved my focus. So I don't really know what I'm trying to do with this video. I guess I just wanted to say, if there is anything out there that you feel like you could replace social media or scrolling on your phone with, reading is a good place to start. Of course, there are other options out there. But I also do want to stress, you need to read stuff that you want to read, because when you get assigned stuff to read in high school, it kind of puts you off to reading, or at least it did for me, because I didn't want to read what was being assigned to me. And when you're forced to read something, even if it is a good book, you're probably not going to like it because you don't want to be reading it. But if it's a story you know you're going to like, or it's a genre that you know you'll like a little bit more, or you even think you'll like a little bit more, I say give it a go. But with that, I do think you should challenge yourself to read some challenging books at times. I don't think you should read books that you don't want to read, but also I think reading books that you kind of want to read but you're intimidated by is also good. I find it really fun to find ambitious books that I don't think I'm going to be able to finish, and then just go for it. And if I end up finishing it, it's the best feeling ever, you know? But yeah, I don't usually just read challenging books. Most of the time I'm just reading strictly for entertainment purposes. And I think that's totally okay too. You know, you can learn a lot from these books, but at the same time, if you're really not liking a book, maybe you should try something else, a different genre, or something else you think will interest you more. I feel like just starting out is the hardest part, because you don't really know what you like yet, and you kind of just have to dive in and test some different styles out. And then when you do eventually find a book you really like, you can go through that author, read their other books, and it just makes it a lot easier to pinpoint the types of books you're going to enjoy versus the ones you probably won't. But yeah, you know, I feel like reading is coming back. I'm seeing a lot more younger people reading now, and I feel like it's starting to be kind of trendy. And I don't even think that's a bad thing. I think that's great. I think more people should be reading, no matter what type of book. I think any reading is good. And yeah, you know, I just wanted to make a video talking about reading and attention span, because
Qualquer leitura é boa. Então, eu comecei a ler livros antigamente. Porque, tipo assim, até os 18 anos eu não tinha terminado um livro. Se eu terminei, foi um. Entendeu? Não tinha lido muito. E aí depois eu parei pra pensar, comecei a ler livros. E eu comecei a ler livro de autoajuda, que é a categoria autoajuda, que tem o Stay Hard do Goggins. Aí, Como Fazer Amigos, Manipular Pessoas. Acho que é assim o nome do livro. Aí, Foque na Sua Carreira, não sei o quê. Eu fui lendo esses tipos de livro e foi me pegando. Até que eu conheci também os livros de fantasia. E eu gostei muito. Igual do Dan Brown, Anjos e Demônios. Eu li quase todos. Anjos e Demônios. Esqueci o nome dos livros. Mas enfim, tá ligado?
I truly do feel
Só lê o que você gosta, é isso.
like reading has not fixed my attention span fully, but it has definitely improved my focus and my attention span tremendously. And it's just crazy to look back to some of the first books I read and how difficult it was for me to focus on the pages and recall what I was reading. Compared to nowadays, it's just way easier for me. So yeah, reading is great. It didn't totally fix my YouTube addiction. I'm still pretty addicted to YouTube, I'm not gonna lie. But I have cut down a ton and replaced some of my old habits with new ones that I feel like are healthier and just better overall. So yeah, thanks for watching.
Até que eu sou mais viciado no YouTube do que no TikTok. Melhorei muito. Mas enfim. E eu gosto de ver séries também. Então é isso. Adiós!